Hello, my name is Paula. My normal friends usually call me Memaw around here, so whatever you'd like to call me is just fine. I've had this idea for several years to teach ladies how it's just as easy to make a meal at home as it is to go through the drive-through window and have everything cold and microwaved by the time you get back home. Today we're going to be making a dish that sounds very difficult, but it's done in this one pot. It's called pasta fagioli. I've always found that it's easier if you go ahead and gather up all your ingredients and have them out and ready to go. It keeps you from having to run back and forth to the refrigerator or the pantry. So I'll tell you what ingredients we're going to be working with today. This recipe calls for 2 pounds of ground beef, and since we're in a crisis situation right now, I think I have about 1.5 pounds of ground beef that's left from the grocery store. Calls for 1 onion chopped up, 3 carrots chopped, 4 stalks of celery chopped, 2 cans of diced tomatoes, 1 can of red kidney beans, 1 can of white kidney beans, 30 ounces of beef stock, and then your spices, which is oregano, pepper, and parsley. Calls for a jar of spaghetti sauce and 8 ounces of pasta. So as you can see, most of these ingredients are things that you either have in your pantry already, or if the shelves weren't empty right now, they would be ready, available at the store. There's not a lot to it. It's a lot of can opening for this dish. Okay, so what you want to do is to get your vegetables that you're going to be working with chopped up and ready to go into the pot. And I will start working on that now. If you don't know how to chop up a carrot, I can show you how to chop up a carrot. It's easier to cut them in half so that they lay flat on your cutting board. That way you're not rolling around on the cutting board while you're cutting. So I'll start here, and we will come back in a few minutes when I've got all of these chopped up and ready to go on to the next ingredient. Okay, I've got the onions chopped up. An onion's an onion, however you want to chop it up is just fine. Just make sure that the pieces are all about the same size. Okay, I've got the pot turned on over here. This is the magic pot that's going to make all this dinner for you tonight. And what I'm going to do first is to put the meat in. Kind of break it up as I put it in there. I've got the fire on under it, about medium high. And I'm going to cook it thoroughly before I start adding the vegetables in. You want to break it up just like you were making spaghetti sauce or ground meat that you were going to make sloppy joes with, or taco meat or whatever. Just you want to make sure it's all gets brown by the time you get through. If you wanted to go ahead at this stage, add a little salt and pepper to it. A little salt and pepper never hurt anybody. What you add in here at this time is not going to make a difference to what's going on in the pot or what the ingredients call for later on. Just brings out the flavor and the juices a little more. Unfortunately, I usually buy hamburger meat at the store that's 90-10, which means 90% meat, 10% fat. By the time I got to the grocery store, all they had left was 83-27. So this is going to be very flavorful because there's a lot of fat content in it, and fat's what gives it flavor. Okay, I was never very good in math at school. It's 73-27. which is still going to make the meat very flavorful because that's where the flavor is. Sorry about that. Okay, we've got the meat brown now. There's no more pink left in the pot. At this point, if you wanted to, you could take and drain the meat, but I'm just going to leave all that flavor in there, and I'm going to start pouring the vegetables in. I'm going to put the carrots in first, not because of any reason, it's just they were on the end of the pot. Being left-handed, they were the first vegetables on my side. In go the carrots and the celery. The pieces that fall out and about and around usually get cleaned up at the end of the meal. I'm going to grab a big slotted spoon and stir this up for a while to start getting everything sauteed. Get the carrots, or get the celery and the onions a little cooked down. The carrots will cook down as we go along. By the time this meal's finished, your carrot's going to still have a little bit of a bite in it, so you know it's not a canned carrot out of the, mushy. You're going to be able to tell you're eating a carrot. Okay, we've let this cook a little bit in the pot, and now what we're going to do is we're going to get our beef broth, and we're going to go ahead and put this in. It calls for 30 ounces of broth, so you can either get 3 10-ounce cans or you can get one of these. This is 32 ounces, so it's a lot less effort on your part to have to not be standing with a can opener in your hand. And you just want to pour that in. And stir it around. Make sure that you don't have anything stuck on the bottom of your pan. And just because it's me and I always, overcook a little bit, I always fill my carton up with it at least halfway full of water. That way your beef broth is not so strong that it overpowers the rest of the ingredients. Okay, what I'm going to do next is open up the tomatoes and the beans. The tomatoes you want to just pour right straight in, juicing all into the pot. The beans, it wants you to drain and rinse those. So I've got a colander in the sink over here, so when it gets time for the beans, I'm going to rinse all the juice off of them and then pour them into the pot. So if you want to be back in a minute, I'll open up cans. Okay, I've poured my 2 cans of beans, white and red kidney beans, in here, and I'm going to rinse them off. Try and get some of the excess water off, and look at that. Look how hard that was, ladies. Pour it in the pan. I've got our 2 cans of tomatoes. And these are diced tomatoes. Just pour them in the pan. This also calls for a jar of spaghetti sauce. And when I went to the store to buy these ingredients, they didn't have any spaghetti sauce at the store in a jar. So I bought a can of pizza sauce that is going to work just fine. And into the pot it goes. And that is the hardest part about this dish, is opening up the cans to pour into the pot. I'm going to stir it up for a couple of minutes, and I'm going to open up the sack of pasta and pour that into the pan. Add the pepper, the oregano, and parsley flakes, and then we just have to let it cook for about 30 minutes. One of the nice things about this dish is that it can be made in a crock pot. Once you brown the meat, you can throw all the friends into the pot of the slow cooker. Put it all in there. Make sure if you're cooking it in a slow cooker that you go ahead and mix it up, because if your pasta is all at the bottom, that's where it's going to stay, is all at the bottom, because you're going to be off either at work or at church or something, and not going to be there to stir it up to keep the pasta off the bottom of the pot. But if you do cook it in a crock pot, when you come home from your 2 hours at church, 3 hours at church, however, you're going to have dinner, lunch ready to go. This calls for 5 teaspoons of parsley, 3 teaspoons of oregano, and some of the oregano I'm using here is oregano that I grew in my own backyard, dried it, and chopped it up, broke it up into little bitty pieces, and put it in the handy dandy hay I came from the store jar. And about a teaspoon of black pepper. If you've never done this before, if you cup your hand up like this and pour it into the palm of your hand, works easier with salt than it does with pepper. Mainly because salt flows freer than pepper does. But if you get it in your hand like that, and if you want to check it to make sure, pour it in. And that's a little scant, but then we did put some in there a while ago. I'll show you how to do it with salt. And unlike some pasta recipes where it wants you to put sugar in to counteract the tomatoes and everything, this dish doesn't call for any, so I don't put any in. I've never had a problem with it. Okay, I'm going to turn the fire down a little bit on this and let it simmer for a few minutes. And probably in about 20 minutes or so, the pasta will be cooked and it will be ready to go on the table. So if you had all your ingredients ready and going, and we're cooking this in a nice normal pace and not trying to explain what you're doing, why you're doing it, you can have dinner on the table in 30 minutes. Okay, we'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, we have cooked this for about 30 minutes on low to medium high heat, and the pasta is cooked to a nice and tender state, nice and al dente as they want to call it. You can either put this on the table in this pot and eat it directly out of the pot, or if you want to put it in a mixed serving bowl, that's fine. But as you can see, we dirtied up one dish to make this entire meal with. It's great with a side salad and garlic toast, or just out of the pot by itself. It refrigerates well, and as it sits in the refrigerator, that pasta just gets more and more soft, so the next day when you eat it, it's just as good, if not better. So I appreciate you checking in with me this time. If you've got any ideas on if you want to see me cook anything else, just let me know on here, and we'll see if my sweet daughter-in-law Stephanie will come back over and film me while I talk to you. Maybe I'll get one of the grandkids over here to help, to show you that even a 12 or a 14-year-old can cook any of these meals. It's no big deal, ladies. It's just as easy to cook it as it is to fight through the drive-through line to go and pick something up. We'll see you next time, and God bless all of your families. Thanks.